Welcome, friend. I am Merritt Ansa, your dream coach and host of the Devoted Dreamers podcast. And I believe God has an unfolding plan for your life, a God-shaped dream just for you. But there are mountains to climb between you and that dream, like fear, comparison, imposter syndrome. And what if I mess this up? Or maybe the next right step is just evading you, or you're constantly feeling overwhelmed or stuck. I promise you are not alone. And that's why I'm here, to bring you stories from sisters in Christ who have been there and have made it out on the other end. Stick around and you'll find a new episode every Wednesday morning and once a month a solo where I will coach you through the stages of following our God-shaped dreams and provide fuel for the fire that's already burning in your heart. If you're ready to find some real traction for your dream instead of sitting on the sidelines, subscribe to the show and then meet me back here every week for transformational tools to help you release the lies so you can freely show up in the world with your gifts, leaning on God in your weaknesses, and serving His kingdom with the dream He's given you. Hey friend, this is episode 201, and I've got a shorter conversation for you today. I'm calling it a mini interview, and this is something I decided to test out for the summer because, hey, it is summer and life is full, and I wanted to see how something a little more compact would go over with you. And in these, I plan to talk about a past guest for maybe just 15 to 20 minutes, and we'll cover one specific thing or change or update about her dream that you've heard about previously on a different episode, but something that I thought you might want to hear a little bit more about. Also, hashtag still unpacking boxes from our move earlier this month, and I need all the extra minutes I can find for that little endeavor. My goal overall, though, is to intersperse these shorter conversations with my regular longer interviews that you will hear other times in the month, plus one solo episode that I still plan to do. But all that said, if you've got thoughts about your favorite episode length, your favorite question that I ask my guests, a specific topic that you're dying to hear somebody talk about, or anything else you want to share with me about the podcast, I'd love to hear from you, and I am always open to your feedback. And now on to today's guest, Katie Bulmer. She is incredible, let me tell you. She has a sincere passion to help young women in their 20s to know their worth and influence in the world. Her dream involves being the voice of wisdom and reason that she wished she had had when she was in her 20s. And I kind of wish I'd had too. Actually, not kind of. Anyway, I came across Katie on social media while she was promoting her book that she'd written a few years ago called Sorority Girls Can Change the World. And as a diehard sorority girl myself, bet you didn't know that, I was immediately drawn to her and her message, and I invited her to be a guest on the podcast pretty early on. So in case you want to go check out one of her previous visits to the Devoted Dreamers podcast, her first interview was episode 55, entitled She Realized She Was Chasing the Wrong Dream. And then Katie returned for episode 176 about how she pivoted her public speaking career with great success during the COVID-19 pandemic. And yes, I invited her to return for a third time for this mini interview. And the third time all came about because I was watching her blow up on social media earlier this year, and some really unexpected things occurred. And I will let her fill in all the details, but suffice it to say, my big takeaway from this conversation is this: keep your eye on the prize. That is, whatever it is that God has called you to do, whoever it is that He has called you to serve, keep doing that, keep serving them with all that you have and all that you are, regardless of the number of followers, likes, comments, positive or negative, that you get on social media. Metrics like those are informative, but they aren't truly meaningful and can, in fact, serve as a huge distraction to your dream. I'm so glad you're here today. Be sure to rate and review the show if you like this one. Here is my mini interview with Katie Bulmer sharing her experience about going viral. Hey, Devoted Dreamers, welcome to the podcast. This is going to be one of those little mini sessions, and I have invited my sweet friend, Katie Bulmer. I call her that. We've never met in person, but I sure feel drawn to her. Katie, welcome.
Hi, thank you. The feeling is mutual. I consider us friends as well.
Oh, that's so sweet. So, if you have not been around this podcast for a while, you probably don't know that Katie and I first talked in 2017, and she had a book that had come out. She was doing some public speaking and was kind of a little bit of a newbie in that world. And so we're now here 3+ years later, and she's come on again for a pivot session. That was episode 176. I think that was last summer. So we have a very specific reason we're talking today, though. Katie, something happened to you. Yeah, I think it was in 2020. And so I want you to tell that story. Maybe give us a little lead into who you are, what you do, kind of your God-shaped dream, and then jump into what happened.
Okay, yes. The what happened was January of this year. But
Okay, 2021 then.
yes. Okay, so my name is Katie and I speak to sorority women specifically, but I have a podcast called Truth for Your 20s. Basically, everything I do is to be who I needed when I was younger. So that is all based on being your typical heartbroken and hungover sorority girl looking for love in all the wrong places. Eventually, finding it in Jesus through the woman at the well story, I realized I was just like this heartbroken woman, and the Savior of the world had a conversation with her and with me when I heard that story. So that's like a very quick testimony and how I got to be what I'm doing now. But one of the things that I am really passionate about through all of this and what I'm doing now is talking about healthy dating. As you can imagine, with a target audience of mostly 20 somethings, their ears always perk up and they're like, wait, what? Are you talking about boys? So that's always a very hot topic. And specifically as it relates to sex and why God designed it and why it matters, because I certainly did not know when I was in high school and college. And I feel like I don't think I'm exaggerating when I say helping young women get this decision right and do this dating thing well could change the world. I mean, that
Mm-hmm.
affects future marriages, which affects future children, and healthy marriages make better employees and better mental health. I mean, everything resides on having healthy decisions as it relates to dating, which will eventually lead to healthy marriages. And educating teens and 20 somethings about that is where it all starts. So obviously, I'm very passionate about these kind of things. So,
And I want to just affirm that in you. Like, I was that girl too. Like, I'm sure somewhere, someone along the way was like, it would be a good idea to like have some wisdom about who
yeah.
you date. But I did not. So thank you.
Right. Well, and I think that that's the big disconnect. I didn't either. I'm like, on paper, I was, oh, yes, I want a good Christian man who's responsible with money and going to be a good father one day. Meanwhile, I'm going to dance on the bar and like go home with a guy who says I'm cute. Like, though there is a path, and the path you are on is not where you say you want to go, sister. Which is plain English to us, but rocket science to my 20-year-old self, right? And to many 20-year-olds today. So that's why what I try and talk about, among other things. But so around, well, during quarantine, so really about a year ago, I got introduced to a PhD of sexual health. He is a doctor who lives in Nashville, Tennessee. Fascinating, studious guy who has studied all the things about just women's sexual health and why this subject, basically, like we're talking about, matters scientifically. He is a Christian, which is cool, but everything he studies is, scientific based, and why monogamy matters, why multiple partners, um, it doesn't always set you up for the best success, and how God set up marriage, and the science supports this, which is no shocker, right? Now, of course, he makes all things new. I don't want anyone to. This is not a message of shame by any means. This is a message of how God makes things new, how He set things up to begin with, and why it matters, and the hormones and all the good stuff, right? So I learned a lot from him. He's fascinating, but so taking notes and learning all I can. And in January, I did a little TikTok video, also shared on Reels, where essentially I learned about this hormone called vasopressin. Vasopressin is essentially, it's present in both men and women, but it actually specifically helps men to bond, and it actually grows the longer you date versus hopping in the sack together. So basically, the video was saying vasopressin receptors grow the longer men date. And this is why hookup culture is not good, because men feel more bonded the longer they date. Well, between TikTok and Reels, 5 million views later, I had people in my DMs asking me medical questions. I'm like, first of all, I am not a PhD. I said what I've learned from him. Second of all, that is a PhD, not an MD. And third, I am a stranger on TikTok. Like, what the heck is happening? But that was just the best of it. I mean, the comments, like I ended up taking 2 weeks away from the app and longer than that before I posted, but it was insane. Now, first, let me say, probably 85 to 90% positive. The DMs flooded in. Thank you for saying this. The people tagging their friends. This is why I've decided not to, to walk away from hookup culture. Very, very good messages. But as a human, those 10% speak loudly and will singe the arm hairs off your hand when you're holding the phone and you see like, this woman is a shamer and she's just using science and she's making this up and she's a liar. And they're talking about how vasopressin has other purposes. Well, yes, it does. Every hormone has other purposes. And by the way, this is a 30-second video. I'm not going to unpack the
Your
theory
thesis.
of relativity. Yes. So it was crazy. It was crazy. Now, and I did follow up with a few like, hey, this is what I'm trying to say videos. But for a time, I just had to like put that bad boy down, like wowza, wowza, wowza. So it has been a crash course in life lessons because everyone says they want to go viral on social media. And then when you actually do, you're like, oh, wow. Like you have to have thick skin. And I have learned a lot about all of this process.
Oh my
Was that
gosh.
a good synopsis?
I would say that's a pretty good synopsis because I remember, I'm not on TikTok, but I don't know, somewhere along the way, I saw your video and my thought was, that makes so much sense to me. It's kind of like, if you're a Christian, something comes out of the scientific community and you're like, of course God would design it that way. Of course he would. And it didn't occur to me that like somebody might not like that information or that there were, it's always kind of surprising like that there are people whose life goal is to upset others on the internet,
Yeah.
So I remember kind of reaching out to you in the midst of all of that. And you were like, oh dear, what did I just do? Like I've been A, misunderstood, B, just like attacked for no reason. And so I hear that like those of us who have a God-shaped dream, who have something that, in a sense kind of relies on people learning about it and hearing about, like, if nobody ever listened to my podcast, what would be the point of me doing it? Yeah. And so what am I really going for? Do I want 5 million people drawn to my message? I think I hear you saying maybe not.
Right. Well, it's so funny because after this is all said and done, I grew 12,000 followers on Instagram. Now, some of that's come down, which is fine. At first I'm like, wait, why are they leaving? But, they hit like or follow because of this one video. I'm not going to talk every day about vasopressin. If that's not that's fine. You're ultimately getting who wants to hang out with you, which is fine. And I don't even know, probably 80,000 TikTok followers. I'm not even exaggerating. It was crazy from one video. So all of that, wow, Katie, that sounds amazing. Okay, well, here's the other side. I said all those crazy DMs. I mean, so all of that, like you said, being totally misunderstood. I had a lot of people thinking I was a PhD and I'm like, no. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm scared to talk. Now I have all these new followers. Now they think I am a PhD. I said what I learned from working with one. Like I did, it never occurred to me had I got 1,000 views like any other video, this wouldn't even be a conversation. But now I'm like, I'm misunderstood. And now all these people hit follow. Am I the sex expert now? Like what? I never, what in the world? And you reevaluate like, whoa, my following is more than doubled based on something that I talked about like one time, really. But I say I talked about it one time. I want to just make the point that God is so just genius and gentle and gets us to where he wants us to go even more than we want to. because I was thinking about this after all this junk hit the fan. And literally, probably 4 years before all of this, I did a video on Facebook, as people used to do. I'm just kidding. No, people. Um, a video on Facebook where I talked about how I learned that the very first word used to describe sex, the word used is echad, a Greek word which translates to binding together at the deepest level. And I was talking about how this gift is beautiful in a marriage because of the binding effects, but can be, it can leave scars and can leave a mess when we treat it cheaply, really. So I did this little video, and all of my close friends and family agreed and were kind, and I had some few shares, and wow, good job, Katie, right? If that, and I'm here now. It was just a longer video. I said, more really. And then I had this 30-second thing that gets 5 million. So all that to say, if that had been the very first time I had spoken out about a controversial topic on the internet, I might have been too scared to ever do it again, but God prepared me. And he's like, Katie, for whatever reason, and it's so crazy because I'm always like, what? Can I just go viral for having a funny cat video or something, And God's like, funny cat videos don't change lives. You have walked this walk. You now have the audience of who you used to be. I very clearly, when we first started this journey, said, I want you to share your story with sorority women. That is what I've designed you to do. I don't think I'm very smart. I don't think I'm very eloquent, but for whatever reason, he has equipped me to do this, to share this message, to be a vessel. And I hope I'm not the only one, for sure. I hope 900 other people come behind me and have a viral video about vasopressin, because positive voices are few and far between. But here we are, and I have developed some thick skin along the way. And recently, after this whole oh my gosh, and I hide for a few weeks and I come back when I first came back, I'm like, let me just post the most vanilla thing I can post to not be controversial. Oh, but here recently I posted about pornography and how that is damaging to relationships. Shocking. And we had, I don't remember, I think about 100 and something thousand views. So nothing too viral like the other one, but lots and lots of comments. Some thought I was dumb and mean and pornography is nothing wrong with it, yada, yada. Some people thought I was the greatest thing ever. And thank you so much for sharing this. But I'm speaking to the girl that I used to be, who had no idea, and she needed to hear it. And so I just keep staying in my lane and keep talking to that girl. And thankfully, those girls are responding and saying thank you. So just got to keep staying in my lane and keep not listening to the loud voices, but listening to the true voices.
I mean, it's such a reminder of how those other voices just serve as a distraction, just trying to get you off track or whatever, not focused on your real agenda. I love what you just said about staying in your lane, speaking to the person that you were called to speak and share your story with, and doing your best to kind of put those blinders on and not look at all the peripheral things that are going on. So I guess I just want to say, thank you, Katie Bulmer, for continuing to speak to the girl that you and I were when we were in our teens and 20s. And obviously, that message is really, really important. I so wish I'd had a Katie Bulmer in my life at the time.
Me too. That's why I do it. I didn't have this kind of direction. And so, there's so many things I try my best to be relatable. That's why I'm even on TikTok, right? I try and speak their language. I try and do stupid dances.
Cute dances. You're so cute.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Well, and again, God's so creative. My dad's side of the family is party animals. I mean, I used to dance and I used to do all kinds of crazy stuff with them. And he used all of that. He stirs it all in the pot. He's like, yeah, well, have fun dancing on the table now. Guess what I have planned later?
Mm-hmm. Right. You'll never guess what you're going to be doing later in life.
Never guess.
Well, speaking of that, I know that you have some fun things coming up. If there's anything that's not too under wraps, would you share about kind of what you're doing next?
Oh, you're the best. Yes, I am working on a book. And this is something I actually worked on several years ago. About a year and a half, I was looking at two big projects. Okay. It's like, A, should I start a podcast, or B, should I work on my book? And like I said, already several chapters in, and I'd kind of gone two different directions. Do I want to do fiction or nonfiction? And I had a bunch of stuff on paper, but I'm like, where do I want to like push the gas and go all in? Ultimately decided on the podcast, and I'm glad I did. We're about, I don't even know how many episodes in now, but it's been a wonderful opportunity. I've got to meet incredible people. And so I'm thankful I did. But now that I kind of got that up and running, I'm like, little book friend, let's see how you're doing over here. And funny, I actually flew to Houston last week, and my intention on the plane was to schedule out all my social media, but I hadn't flown in so long. I kind of forgot that you need Wi-Fi to do these things. I was hoping that maybe my the scheduling I use Planoly anyway would be able to do it without Wi-Fi, but it didn't work. So I was like, well, what am I going to do? And I fired up my laptop, and I'm like, oh, dusting off my old book manuscript. So resurrected that bad boy up, and it was so fun because you start to tell yourself, oh, it's all crap, like it's so bad, like I just had to start all over. And you open it up and you're like, oh, it's not all crap. There's at least 60% that isn't.
Yay.
So I'm excited to kind of resurrect that and clean it up and get that ready to hopefully run it by an editor and see what happens with that. So, I mean, I still got a while to go, but it's in process again. So I'm so excited.
I love it. Okay. You're reminding me that we actually talked about this a couple of years ago. It's like, so are you going fiction or nonfiction?
I'm going fiction.
All right.
I'm
so
telling
fun.
this story. Yes. My dream, and this, no one would know if they read it, but in my brain, I'll know. My favorite book of all time is Redeeming Love. And so it is a fictional story based on the woman at the well, who I love, but it's modern day, and it's funny and silly and all the things.
Just what your audience would enjoy, right?
Yes. Talking about like frat parties and, all the things.
Oh my goodness. Well, it's such a great story. You said earlier that this was how Jesus attracted your attention, because the Savior of the world spoke to the woman at the well, and you realized you were her. So
yes,
I love it.
Yes.
That's so exciting. And I think it's really encouraging too, to hear you say, I had these two big things on deck. I chose one, and you focused and you doubled down, and your podcast seems to be really resonating with your audience. And I love seeing who you have on every week. And then, okay, I've got that under my wing. You're going to keep going doing that, and then pull out this other thing. Like, we can't do 50 things well, right?
Right.
So that's sure an encouragement, because every time I have to be like, I can't do this and that, it feels hard. Like, I don't want to put that away. I want there to be 6 of me so I can do all the projects.
Same. I know. And now I'm like, okay, wait, now I have like 3 big dreams. Which do I go first? But 100%. And then they can all exist at some point in your life, but not all at the same time.
Yeah. Not if you're also a mom and a wife and ever want to like cook a meal.
Yes. Or like sleep.
Well, oh yeah, right. There's that. That little known thing that we all need. Well, Katie, I would just love for you to kind of just talk. I always ask at the end, how is God transforming you right now? What have you noticed is different about you than maybe the last time we talked last year or 3 years ago? Finish us out with just like a little reflection on what he's done.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say, I don't know if I said this, but everyone wants to grow their platform, but not everyone's ready. And I would have told you I was ready years ago. And God is a good father. He's, I always come back to that. He's a good father. It's like my kids, I'm ready to drive a car. You're 11, like we think that we're ready for stuff that we're not, and he will give us in due time. And so anyway, I just had to say that because he's good and patient. And had this happened a year ago with my video I put on Facebook, I probably would have died. So anyway, what is God teaching me? I think that he is just reminding me of the obvious. And that is that he never, ever in the history of ever picked the most qualified. I mean, look at the disciples. Look at every example we have of heroes of our faith. They are the most unlikely to be chosen human beings. And I'm always like well, God, I don't want to talk about sex on the internet, or God, I don't want to like hold a microphone. Like a lot of these things. It's not something I've really set out to do. And look how unqualified. I like to point out all the things, reasons, not me. And I always come back to like, oh, but I had that experience in advertising. I made commercials when I was 20 something on antiquated equipment for a low budget TV station. And now I'm gonna make TikToks, like all the little things he is using at the time you like don't see where it fits, but it has a purpose. And I don't know, I just feel like he is so unique and so smart. And not to question his purposes, even if it doesn't make sense to you, that he chose you for some reason. And maybe it's not glorious. Maybe you're not like writing a book or whatever. Who cares? Like if you are doing something for his kingdom, it's just as important, like the parts of the body, the ear and the hand and the hair, like it's all matters. It's all important.
So glad you were here today, and I would love to get to know you. So if you enjoyed this episode, or maybe you have a question or a comment or a topic you want to discuss a little bit more, just come on over and find me on Instagram. I'm at MerrittJO. You can drop me a DM with whatever is on your mind. You can tell me a little bit about yourself, your dream, or what's got you stuck right now. I would so love to connect with you.